Hello, my friends. Your buddy Phil here, project management trainer and coach. It's a pleasure to be speaking to you today. I wanted to give you the backstory of the Praizion channel and my personal channel. And you might have seen my videos out there about project management, about leadership, and you might be wondering, what is this all about? Who is this guy? So I want to give you the backstory of who I am. So my name's Phil Akinwale. I'm a project management trainer and coach, but I didn't start off as a project management trainer and coach. My first degree was in civil engineering. My second degree is in construction information technology. I started off this journey back in the day, 2000, when I got into Citigroup in the United Kingdom. I was working as an archiving manager, as a records manager. And within that time of working at Citigroup, I decided to pursue my master's degree in construction information technology. As I was doing this degree in construction IT, I met my professor. His name is Keith Jones. And Keith Jones said, I feel that you should do a dissertation on barriers to implementing project management systems. Now, the entire idea about project management systems was a little bit new to me. I'd heard about it, but I didn't know that much. So I did research by surveying different firms and finding out if they used any project management systems. And if they did, I wanted to understand what the backstory was behind them using these project management systems. So I did a number of surveys and gleaned a number of pieces of information, and that was the basis for my thesis. So at the end of the day, when I got done with that, I was a little bit more confident. I felt that I knew project management because I wrote that dissertation. Well, it turns out, I found out the hard way, I actually didn't know project management. In fact, I had a lot to learn, but I didn't know this until I went to an interview at DHL. So I moved from working at Citigroup, fast forward some years later, I was now in the United States, and I went for the interview at DHL. When I got to DHL, the interview didn't turn out as I expected. A lot of the questions I was being asked seemed a little bit foreign, but I did my best. But there was a major misconception, and that was the difference between a project management system and a project system. In other words, project management lifecycle versus project lifecycle. I totally bombed it. I mixed both of them up. Now let's think about what the difference is. A project management lifecycle is like the 5 process groups of initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling and closing. But a project lifecycle is analysis, design, develop, test, and implement. So I totally bombed it. I totally missed the boat. The interview was a disaster. And I knew that there was something I needed to learn, but I couldn't figure out what it was. It was not until many years later, about 3 years later, I was looking back in the rearview mirror and I realized how far off base I was, because by then I had met my mentor in a different firm. So when I bombed that DHL interview, I went for a few other interviews and I got employment, but it wasn't in project management like I was expecting. By then I'd started training Microsoft Project. Long story short, I met my mentor. Her name is Mary, and she was a colleague, you could say, in a previous employment just after the DHL interview. And she said, Phil, I think you would make a great project manager, actually a PMP, a project management professional. And I said, I've been hearing about this PMP thing. How do I get into it? And she said, well, you take an exam, and I've got some books and I've got some information and I can give that to you. I said I would be interested in doing that. So she gave me her books. There was a Rita Mulcahy book from way back in the day. There was a Rita Mulcahy CD where she had a voice talent reading out all the definitions. And there was the PMBOK Guide 3rd edition and 2nd edition. So I started off doing my research for the PMP exam, and I realized that I could actually take the exam because I had enough experience from my work at Citigroup. Long story short, when I got into the PMBOK Guide, my first Saturday in the PMBOK Guide, I ended up spending a full 7 hours in the library trying to tackle the PMBOK Guide 3rd edition. Totally bombed the experience because I didn't understand how to read the PMBOK Guide. I thought it should read more like a narrative book. So when I started getting into it and it was going down nooks and crannies and 1.1.1.2 and I got lost. Long story short, it was just a disaster. That first day at Mesa Library, trying to study the PMBOK guide, was like no other day in my PMP journey. That was the steepest climb. And you know, after 7 hours, I was still nowhere. I remember going there with a family member, and at the end of the day, the report was, I feel like this isn't for me. I don't understand this book. But little did I realize that project management wasn't just about the PMBOK guide. It was about connecting the dots and understanding how all these definitions and all these ideas catalyzed into a more profound understanding of project management. You see, you could read all the PMBOK guides in the world, but if you're not connecting the dots, you'll be lost. And what I wasn't doing was connecting the dots. After dealing with the PMBOK guide, I put that aside and I started looking at this book by Rita Mulcahy. As I began traversing the book, it began to make sense. The first few chapters of the PMBOK guide were foundational. But if you didn't have any formal knowledge of project management, maybe you've been doing it, but you didn't know what all these things were called, then it would just be a waste of time. And that's what happened in the Mesa Library, trying to plow through definitions without understanding how everything interconnects. Long story short, I ended up reading the Rita Mulcahy book, going through the quizzes. There was also a book by Claudia Baca I ended up getting on eBay back in the day. So I ended up reading all these books and going through them. The book from Claudia, and there was someone else who wrote that book. I really didn't go too much into that. I realized I needed to focus on just one book. I needed to understand the terrain, and I was going to stick to that. So that's what I did. Now, I had a rather annoying habit of getting towards my exam date, because this is 2005. I started this journey in January 2005. January, February, March, April. Now, April is the first time I said, okay, 4 months, I'm going to take this exam. Planned, got cold feet. Now, back in the day, the PMI wouldn't charge you to change or reschedule your exam. So I would get to the exam date, towards the exam date, and I would reschedule it. I would change it. I would change it from what it was to 2 weeks out. And I became really good at that. And as the days approached, I would change it and I would change it until it got to May, end of May. And I'd done this about 3 or 4 times. I said, you can't keep doing this, Phil. Then I would make excuses. Oh, I'm traveling, I'm on the road, I'm busy. And it got to the point I said, you know what? You are going to face the music. You're going into that exam on June 25th, 2005. I don't care whether you feel you're ready or not. You are going into that exam. So I did. I went into the exam. It was on Camelback Road in Phoenix, Arizona, and I did everything I could. Now, the day before the exam, I remember taking a quaint old strange quiz that I found. And you know, this is a double-edged sword, because taking a quiz the day before your exam from left field that you've never done before could be quite risky. But that's what I did. And I'm like, what on earth? These questions are rather different. I never saw anything like this in the reader material. Long story short, when I got into the exam the day of, you got to picture me after going through 6 months of prep. I'm rolling up my sleeves and preparing for that big onslaught with the exam, and I'm like, I'm ready, bring it on. Get into the exam. Question 1. Crickets in my head. Nothing's connecting. Nothing's going off. Then question 2. Same thing. Crickets. Absolutely clueless. Question 3. 4. 5. By this time, I'm wondering, am I in the right exam? Am I really in the right place? Question 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. No difference. There are few that I was able to guess, like an eeny, meeny, miny, mo thing, but I wasn't entirely sure if that was the right answer. Can you imagine going through 20 questions and not knowing if that is the right answer, but just keep plowing through? It's like going through quicksand. I got to question 20. Moment of truth. Reality sets in. You know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking, okay, this is it. I guess this is the battle of the PMP who tried his best, tried to ace the exam, but failed. So how am I going to tell Mary, my mentor, who gave me all these books, invested all this time on me, how am I going to tell her I didn't pass the exam? And I started thinking of excuses to make. Then all of a sudden, a conspiracy theorist gremlin, that's right, we all have them. We all have that conspiracy theorist gremlin that jumps on your shoulder and tells you could be lies or made up stories. But anyway, this gremlin jumped on my shoulder and said, Phil, the reason why you're getting all the questions wrong is because the PMI is watching you from their glass panel and they can see all the questions you're getting wrong and they're giving you more of those questions. I said, that sounds plausible. Makes sense why I'm getting all these wrong, because they're realizing the areas I'm weak in and they're giving me more questions. I'm going to beat them to their game. So you know what I did? I went all the way to the end of the exam. You see, back in the day, 2005, the exam had 200 questions and you could jump around the exam as you wished. So what did I do? I jumped all the way to the end and I did question 200, 199, 198, 197, 196. And truth be told, this stuff was beginning to seem easier. Thank goodness, right? Because remember, 1 hour had gone by and I had done how many? 20. So I know you're smart. Think about it. If I was answering 20 questions in an hour and I had 200 questions to answer, how many hours would it take me to finish the exam? 10 hours. Oh my goodness. So what did I do? I went to the end. Remember, now I have 3 hours left. So I'm accelerating from question 200, 199, 198, 197. And honestly, as I go backwards, I go all the way back to question 120. And it seems as easy as I imagined it would be. Now, this is a lesson for those who might be taking the exam. Sometimes the exam is front-loaded, which means all the difficult stuff is actually in front. Or should I say, the worst of the worst is actually in front. Long story short, I get to question 120 and then I feel a pocket of difficulty. Now, instead of being discouraged, I'm on a roll. So I'm just mowing it all down and I'm bursting through that proverbial barrier. Then I get to question 70 something and then another pocket of difficulty and then 50 and another pocket of difficulty. It's like it's all spread around to kind of be like an obstacle. I don't know if they intended this, but you got to remember I'm freewheeling in my head by this point. Finally, I get to question 20, where my life or death story, right, began. And I get to question 20 and I have 5 minutes left. So what do? Do I check my work and start changing stuff? Or what do I do? So I get to question 20 and I say, my head is gone. That's it. I have nothing left. I'm just going to say my last prayers. That's what I'm going to say my last prayers. So I start saying my last prayers. And I say, if I can come out of this exam alive, I promise I will do everything that I need to do to pass the message on to people how sick, how crazed, how demented this exam is. Because this exam is sick. I will tell everyone in the world, I don't care, the dog, the cat, the person on the street, I promise I will let people know. Just help me come out, because I can't go through this again. Said my last prayers and hit the end button to end the exam. And the screen goes blank for what seems to be an eternity. And then all of a sudden, with some white background and black lettering, Welcome, you've been selected for a survey. We would like to find out, did you enjoy the exam experience? Did you like the staff? Did you like the venue? And honestly, in my head, I'm like, oh, place looked pretty dingy. I wasn't that impressed. But remember, the conspiracy theorist gremlin is right there and saying, Phil, if you say you didn't like the venue, you'll fail. You better say you liked it. So, did you like the venue? Yes. Were you happy? Yes. Was the place good? Yes, yes, everything, yes. Then eventually, I hit submit. And then, in green, seemed like green text to me, to celebrate, you are now a PMP. Congratulations! Talk about the man who went for a hike in Colorado and got chased by a crazed bear. Barely had enough ammo to save himself and ran as far as his legs could carry him and as fast as his legs could carry him. That was me. So imagine when I got to the proctor in front and the proctor's like, oh, you actually did quite well. I'm like, yeah. And I staggered out of the place, and ever since then, my mission has been to help everyone who is taking this exam understand it is just as sick and as crazed as it was back in '05. And that's why I'm on a mission to help anyone who wants to take and pass this exam. I have been through the entire path, and I know how to avoid the pits, the valleys, the real lowest of the lows, and that's what I aim to share on this channel. How to traverse the journey for PMP and beyond, because when I got certified, that was the beginning. The longer story is that after I got certified, my salary level went up. Looking at before I got certified to when I got certified, it went up 300% in a matter of months. Now let me give you the backstory and how it worked. Before I got certified, making somewhere in the high 40s. Started studying for PMP. Watch this. Added PMP to my resume. Salary level went up into the 70s. Got certified. Salary went up into the high hundreds. Just by affiliation alone, your salary level can increase. And when you get certified, the sky's the limit. So I got certified as a PMP, and I started working in a number of organizations that I could only dream of before getting certified. General Dynamics, I had a family member who worked there. Looked like a nice company. I wasn't getting any invitations until I got certified. Ended up working in General Dynamics within weeks on a huge, massive project. I will not disclose the details because it's confidential. But worked at General Dynamics, and that opened my mind up to the possibilities of aerospace, defense, and space, and so on. So I began to have my eye on Honeywell. Long story short, I took a hiatus, took a break, and then came back towards the end of '05. So I went over back to the United Kingdom, kind of chilled for a little bit, and then I was interviewed by Honeywell while I was out taking a break, because someone found my resume just as I was about to get on the plane. And they said, you make a good fit for this. What were they looking for? They were looking for an earned value management expert, someone who knew about earned value. I'm like, wow, I fit the bill. I know about earned value. I studied it for my exam. But they were going to ask me questions about an earned value management system and how to implement it. So what did I do? I started studying. I studied at Defense Acquisition University the ins and outs of pragmatic earned value and cost management. So when I got to the interview, I was already battle ready. And I gave them the entire story of how to implement an earned value management system. Everything from start to finish. Everything about the resources, everything about the scope, everything about the milestones, all about the different ways earned value could be measured. Long story short, I started that job January 2006. Got into Honeywell. Started working as an earned value consultant. Somewhere along the way, it came to my attention that people were trying to pass the PMP exam at Honeywell. and they were failing the exam. And many of these were colleagues and people that I had met, and some of them high above in the firm and so on, all the way up to director, VP level. Long story short, I told my boss, hey, I think I can help these people because I studied like a maniac for my exam. This stuff is still in my head. How about I begin teaching them this stuff? And he said, oh, that sounds like a good idea. Let me talk to my boss. So my boss decides to talk to Mark, his boss. My boss is Jim. Jim talks to Mark. And Mark said, oh yeah, that'll be great. Where there's food, people show up. Why don't we make this like a bi-weekly thing? For the first session, we'll put some pizzas out there, and hopefully the people will show up. And my goodness, show up they did. My first session, the room was packed. That conference room at Airlane, if you know about Honeywell, the Airlane facility, we have a number of buildings there. I was in one of the buildings, and in that little conference room, that is where my next wave of career really started. Because even though I was a PMP, little did I know that those humble beginnings in that conference room at Honeywell would transform me into a project management and leadership coach on a world stage, training the likes of NASA and the FBI, spending a whole week with our men and women in uniform at Mildenhall, a place out there in the United Kingdom where our United States Air Force is. Also Fort Lee in Virginia. Spent a whole week training nothing but PMP. Spent time with the Department of Commerce people in DC and the Department of Transport people on the West Coast, and the list goes on. But little did I know that my humble beginnings at Honeywell, after I got certified, would take me on a global stage, helping people to know more about project management, get certified, and be the best version of themselves. And that's why my twofold passion is, one, help people know more about project management, help people understand about the PMP exam, but beyond that, the way to succeed in life was revealed to me by someone we call America's leadership guru. His name is John C. Maxwell. And I was fortunate to be introduced to John's work because he had come visiting our church once, and even though I missed that service, I was told, hey, there's this guy called John and he wrote this book called The 360-Degree Leader. You should read it. So I got the 360-Degree Leader because a time came and I needed to train leadership. And I realized I really didn't know enough. I knew project management, but leadership was a different beast. I ended up joining John Maxwell's team. I was a founding member of the John Maxwell team back in 2011, thereabouts. Began to learn from John. Got challenged by John. Got challenged to actually write a book and put my name on it by John. Ended up doing that. And as time proceeded and as I went through John's enormous library of material, I began teaching this to firms. I began holding conferences in leadership. Eventually, I began reading more to the point that I felt I had my own spin on leadership for project management. So in 2021, as COVID was getting crazier, I decided I needed to launch a leadership platform to help project managers know more about leadership. So I founded the Project Leadership Institute. You can go to projectleadershipinstitute.com and learn more about the curricula that I teach to organizations and to an elite group of project managers who are PMP certified, and they are my inner circle, and we meet every week. We have a group that meets on Thursdays, we have a group that meets on Saturdays, and it's exclusive for those who are PMPs. So if you are a PMP and you want to know more about the programs, you can always put a comment below and I'll let you know when there are programs coming up or when there's availability to join. Because joining is very, very hard when we have so many people interested in the program. But we have auxiliary programs in what I call PM 360. And maybe you'll see a PM 360 pop up for either leadership or agile, or project management, or project management as it's applied to the real world. It will be a pleasure to have you on some of those. So stay tuned to the channel and you'll definitely get notified when those are available. But I ended up founding the Project Leadership Institute. John was very encouraging. He was our keynote speaker. And since 2021, we have grown in leaps and bounds. Since I got affiliated with John Maxwell, I've written over 40 books. And it was all because of leadership. And as John says, everything rises and falls on leadership. So growth in the professional world is twofold. You got your project management or whatever you studied, but the leadership piece is actually the more important one, because everything rises and falls on leadership. So I hope this backstory has given you a good idea of what the channel is about and what we do, what my team and I do. If you would like to know more, go on down to the Praizion website, praizion.com, or you could just email support@praizion.com. I visit organizations worldwide, training, coaching them in project management, in leadership, in Agile. And the story about Agile, that's for another day. I look forward to having a conversation with you again. If you got any questions whatsoever, please put them in the comments below. And I look forward to seeing you again on this channel. Like, subscribe, share, follow me on LinkedIn. I also post on LinkedIn, and I do a lot of LinkedIn Lives. Thank you very much. I'll talk to you soon.